41 years since she's first formed. This particular year as well, which is 2025, it's 30 years from two releases that you guys have had. Killers Within and Ill at Ease, which is fairly...
I was going to say 40, 41. I was going to say, when did we start? 86?
84. 84.
Oh, 84 was the genesis of the idea. Okay, yeah, no worries.
And the other big thing that seems to be in the history, of course, was in 2013, Eli started playing drums in the band. So he's been there or whereabouts over that time frame, and now you're playing Froth Fury Fest in your own hometown. So how do you guys, more so probably aimed at Kim and John on this one, how do you guys look back at your whole career and think to yourself, how the fuck are we still here?
Exactly that. I just think, how the fuck are we still here? I don't know. There was never any intention. I think the thing is that it wasn't about playing music to do something or be something or make it big or whatever. It was just we wanted to play music. I used to sort of laugh that there was an autistic almost element to it, that we just kept doing the same thing because we enjoyed it, and it didn't, we just kept doing it. There wasn't, the first goal was to get a single out, and the second goal was to do an album, and then once you've done an album, it's like, oh, we'll do another album. But I think largely because Kim and I always worked, it wasn't our whole means to an income, so we could be, I don't know, just take our time, do what we wanted to. It wasn't the be-all, end-all. 95 to 2000, whatever, it was really promising. We were doing a lot and touring, but again, it just never became this whole thing for us where we had to do it. So it is amazing to find yourself at 60 still doing it. It's crazy.
I think the other thing is, and this I attribute to John, was he always felt brothers in bands seem to do pretty well. Maybe brothers not withstanding.
Oasis do all right.
They're doing okay now that they've made up or whatever. But generally brothers with siblings, you can kind of want to beat the shit out of each other, but you're still brothers and blood's thicker than water, and you go back to the rehearsal room even if you have had a bad rehearsal, because you just get over it. Whereas a lot of bands where egos come into play and there's get a bit precious about, oh, this is my song and nobody wants to play it or whatever. I think that the fact that John and I, obviously brothers, and just keep coming back no matter what, you've lived your whole life together, and to then have a third person who's, well, I think Eli's our 14th drummer, but our longest serving drummer.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, so Eli's now beaten all previous records of being with the band as long as he has. So yeah, I think that's part of it as well, the longevity of the band. And as John said, we had jobs. So when things got busy with work or life, and John was overseas, I was overseas, the music was still in the background, and yet we were able to just pick it up where it left off and start again. Big gaps between albums, 5, sometimes 10 years between albums, but yeah, we'd never considered stopping. So it is kind of weird, 41 years. So
it's crazy.
It's interesting you mentioned Oasis, because bizarrely, about siblings as well, because bizarrely I saw them in the Bee Gees documentary, and Noel Gallagher actually mentions about the whole thing about siblings in there as well, that there is a kind of a bond that not just as on a personal level, but also musically, that keeps everything going and musically going along there. The part I was also going to touch on was the sound that you guys have got. Like, when there's one reviewer will sit there and say, oh, you're alternative metal. Another one will sit there and say, you're hard rock. Another one will sit there and say, well, you got these hardcore punk influential parts. How do you guys describe your music?
I just always say it's heavy rock, because if I ask people, that's the thing people ask at work, oh, you're in a band, what do you play? And it's just too hard to say, post-hardcore, blah, 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 whatever. I just say, call it heavy rock.
One reviewer described us as English melody meets American Sonic.
Genre,
which is not a genre, of course, but that's probably the background of Joy Division influencing us. Then us playing a show with Big Black, their last show in the Southern Hemisphere, which had a huge influence on the way they, played and constructed stuff. So, but it's not a genre. But yeah, so most of the time I don't bother either trying to, because some people go, "Oh, you guys are metal." It's like, nah.
It's heavy. I just say it's heavy, and for me, heavy rock just works. Yeah.
Eli.
Yes.
As the guy then who's the outsider, growing up in Adelaide, knowing about this, I'm presuming you grew up in Adelaide, but I know you live here now. Knowing that this band's very legendary in this neck of the woods, you go and join them. What was your view of the Mark of Cain from the outside?
Never heard of us.
I'd never
heard of us.
That's not 100% true. I had heard of you. I had a neighbour when I was quite young, 14, 15, playing in my first bands. I grew up down south, rural South Australia. And I had this neighbour who used to lend my first bands PA gear and stuff. And he was punk dude. And he was like, "You got to listen to this band. They're called the Mark of Cain. They're the best band in the world. And John Scott, he taught me how to mix and all this sort of stuff." And I was whatever, old guy. And so, I missed the boat, I guess. It wasn't really my era or my genre of the music specifically, but there were so many bands that I listened to sort of around the Mark of Cain that it was only a matter of time until eventually I kind of actually got introduced to them and went, "Oh, this is fucking cool. How did I not know about this band?" And then to obviously work with the band years later is a pretty wild full circle moment.
So he came into the where we were rehearsing and give him the opportunity to try and join the band, and he had no respect for us. No, but he kind of had learnt songs, and I think he wanted a music stand, and we were like, "What do you fucking need a music stand for?" But he'd written out all the songs in drum music, music notation, not drum tablature, music notation. We were like, "Fucking hell!" And then I think he told John how he was doing something wrong on Point Man. I'm thinking, "Man, this guy's got."
That was it. Then it was fucking out. It was going to be out.
I'm thinking, man, here's a guy young, because I think you were 22,
21 or something, yeah.
And he's kind of completely transcribed our music, which we wouldn't be able to do. And then he's told John that he's getting something wrong in Point Man.
Fuck, he was playing with fire early.
Yeah, I had no idea. Hell, I should bit my tongue a bit more back in the day.
No, it was one of those things. Because at the time, look, John Stanier was out, but we were always thinking, at some point he's going to come back, and we needed someone to help us, keep match fit. And it just became more and more obvious that it's a done deal. We want Eli to play for us, and at one point even it was coming up, well, was John ever going to redo some shows with us? And I can remember just talking to Kim, and I said, "It's it, it's done." Eli's the drummer, and that's it, and it has been since then. So, it was really refreshing to see someone come in and be able to deconstruct, what we do, because it's not particularly normally written music, and has some weird timings in it, and I think it's helped. It's helped me even understand how I write from that point of view.
So now that leads in very nicely to a little birdie told me that you guys are collectively writing music for the first time in, if my notes are correct, 13 years.
Probably.
That would be
That's true.
13 years would be correct. 13 years. Because Eli, the first time we're writing with Eli, which is been a great experience.
Yeah, so quite often I would just come in with a riff and we'd all work on it and, finally get there. But, this has been very different. Eli's come in with some, fully formed songs that we've taken and worked on. And that's a huge change in the way the Mark of Cain works. And it's been great. It's been really great. And Eli's, also, he's had the time and he's got the musicianship to be able to look at the band and know what sort of sits outside of what we do, what sits inside. And come up with things that really, resonate for us as a band, and we go, fuck yeah, let's do that. Let's give it a go. We've got probably a couple of new songs that we'd like to probably play and try out as well when we do play live. obviously don't want to give everybody 6 new songs because I'll just sit there and no one will know what's going on. But yeah, and so the idea is to continue down that path and probably record next year and put something out and tour on that.
Yep. Eli's our AI bot and writing.
Just putting prompts into me, and I just sit there and
just write.
Here's that new song, guys. Here it is. Here it is.
You find it that now writing new music as well, and writing it with, and I don't mean to be rude when I say this, but obviously someone who's quite considerably younger. Do you feel that gives you guys quite a bit of a, almost an adrenaline boost, like having a couple of cans of Red Bull, you're kind of good to go with this?
I don't know. It's really great to have that injection of someone coming in and just, having ideas and wanting to do it. I love it from my point of view.
What I would say, I don't write much at all, but what I've noticed...
Got that recorded now.
No. Well, I've always admitted that. I just get abused when I get it wrong. So, help! What's the signal? But what I noticed, John, as a songwriter, the songs that John would write from a musical perspective, not talking lyrically, would always be from the inside out. We would spend an hour and a half on one little riff, and I'd be going, "What is he chasing?" And he'd be chasing some tiny little timing thing on something, and I'm thinking, "Man, what a waste of this time we're doing." But then at the end of it, I'd realise it was worth it. Eli writes in a more holistic kind of from the outside in almost, or maybe he doesn't, I don't know. But he brings fully formed songs to the rehearsal room, which is just a different way of writing. And then, so it's just different. And it's probably going to be faster because we took forever to write albums because of the songwriting process. I think that's fair to say, John, that the songwriting process took a long, long time because it was just incremental.
Well, it's very organic. It'd be working something over and over again, and then that doesn't work. So try something else, and particularly trying to find drum riffs to something, or play something, get the drummer to do a million different interpretations of that until it's something that feels right, and then move on to the next one. And that does take time. I think I met someone who was trying to explain they'd help drum for a while for us, and he was explaining that what we do is just try everything and then stick with something we like. If someone comes in like Eli has with a fully formed song, then we sit down and within that the bounds of what that is, it also changes slightly because there'll be ways he'll present it, and then I might play guitar somewhat a little bit different or whatever. But it starts off intentionally TMOC focused as a written piece, and it just beds in more and more to become more and more TMOC the more we work on it.
Yeah, and I don't want it to be play it as it is. If I bring something in, I'm doing what my interpretation of the Mark of Cain is from 13 years of sitting, behind you guys playing. But, given that this is the first time that I'm actually involved in the writing process, I want the writing process to be the Mark of Cain's writing process. So really what I'm kind of doing is approaching it from the perspective of I'm trying to make a statue. I'm trying to chip away all the marble, this big block, and eventually it'll be a TMOC song. So if I can chip 80% of it away and make it look kind of like that, and then we bring it into the room, and like you say, we take that very organic approach. And, sometimes we go in there and we spend an hour and a half on one riff and we change one note about it, but that makes it the Mark of Cain, or that makes it a riff that John would have written. And that's what I'm looking for in that. So I think I'm just trying to have that more macro view and just go, this is a song form, this is the sort of thing that the Mark of Cain would do. How do we then make it a bit more unique?
It is
it's been really good. It's been really great, refreshing.
And it's likely to be faster because it's... I think you're right, Eli. You bring all the bones to the table and then we work it as a band, but it's a faster process as a result because of that. But,
you bring the paint and then I assemble it into the...
Look, I just don't know how many more years you guys have got left, so I'm trying to, let's get it going.
The IP is, we're transferring the IP to Eli. Hold the patent.
So what I've heard during that process is Eli is the brains behind the organisation, and you two are just a pretty frontman. That's all I've heard.
That's exactly right.
He's basically Paul McCartney in those latter years. He's just
Exactly right. And if there's a delay in the album coming out, it's all Eli's fault.
And if it sucks, it wasn't me.
It's him.
It wasn't me.
Very true.
No pressure. All right. So you mentioned earlier that I think John did. You mentioned earlier that potentially there'll be some new songs that you want to go and play live. That brings us then to Froth and Fury Festival. January, you're going to be fairly high, I imagine, on the set times that day. What can fans expect from a Mark of Cain show at the Showgrounds?
Short, sharp and shiny, because we only get a small amount of time, I think, to fit in our songs, which obviously sometimes go 3 or 4 minutes or even longer. But yeah, it'll be wham, bam, thank you, ma'am.
45 minutes of intensity, I think. Yeah. I mean, we always pick a set. I tend to assemble a set list. We've agreed roughly what it is with a couple of new songs. So, but it's always come out swinging and stay hard and intense. We'll definitely be playing some fan favourites.
Oh, yeah.
For the TMOC fans out there that have been with us for 40, some of them 41 years. But yeah, it'll be short, sharp, 45 minutes of intensity, and I think we're playing the main stage, so sound production will be very good. Looking forward to it.
Mm.
You mentioned a comment a few years ago, John, when you were being interviewed by The Note. I know, because I read it today. And which comment you
I remember.
Fucking I prepared for this. And it was quite interesting, actually, and I did want to kind of touch on this because I know obviously Eli's in other bands in the Adelaide scene as well, that you mentioned that you thought Adelaide itself marched to its own beat when it came to its own scene and not really listening or watching to what the West Coast does. And obviously you guys are an Adelaide institution, so do you feel that there's kind of a nice marriage between Adelaide, Mark of Cain and Froth and Fury Festival? Because it's here?
Hard to say. I'm sort of probably less involved. I've been seeing a few more bands these days. I think, yeah, and where I was talking from was very much in the era of where we came from, that bands just tend to do their own thing. Yeah, I think, Froth and Fury, I think from a point of view of the bands that are being played there, we're definitely some of the bands, the older bands we're all familiar with and have grown up with. As far as institutionally linked, I don't know. I feel sometimes we're a little bit outdated and maybe we're sometimes just not quite in everybody's thoughts at these days, but I hope that by playing we will, introduce ourselves to a few people who probably haven't seen us.
But I think what Jason's doing with Froth and Fury is great for, Adelaide, given, some festivals bypass Adelaide. Adelaide is the forgotten son sometimes. So I think,
or they're run by people who basically don't pay the bands.
Yeah, that's right. Whereas Jason, I think, as a local and committed to the Adelaide scene, it's a good thing to be part of. So I think there's an alignment with the Mark Cain. We kind of stayed in Adelaide. We never left Adelaide. Everyone was telling us we needed to be successful. We kind of stuck here, and I think Jason's now bringing to Adelaide a great festival. I mean, this year they're taking it to Perth, I think. So
yeah.
I'll throw that to you, Eli, because I know you're in a band here as well, not just the Mark of Cain, Live Pilot as an example. And I know you guys do also do quite a few shows. You did one just a few months ago as well. I mean, how do you feel then, probably at the you are at the younger age bracket? Sorry, guys.
No, you're right. Please keep telling me I'm young.
Yeah. So at that aspect then, looking at it from a, Adelaide, Mark of Cain, Froth and Fury element.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an obvious link through there. The quote is accurate, I think, today still. Adelaide exists in its own kind of microcosm of a music scene. We get passed over for everything, and I don't think we get really considered by a lot of, not just the industry, especially on the East Coast, but also some of the other bands. We're just in our own little world in a similar way that WA is as well. I've got some friends in bands in Perth, and I've always seen them kind of build their own scene and just do what they want to do, and they have quite a thriving little music community over there, and I think we're kind of very similar in that. And seeing what Jason's done with, you know, Froth Fury, and obviously he's done other festivals as well, and, you know, my other band, Life Pilot, was, you know, we were part of Froth Fury the first year, and we've been involved in some of the other stuff he's done. You know, it's always a really well-run event. It's always something where the artists are taken care of, the, you know, the audience is obviously taken care of. It's great production. Everything just works smoothly. So, you know, I think there's a really good kind of ethos behind everything that he does, and it's not about outsourcing it to, you know, bigger people or people from the East Coast or whatever. You know, it's very much a grassroots thing that has just grown. And you know, as like I said, someone from a band that played the first year, we're really proud to see how much it's grown. You know, it's incredible to be, you know, hitting the Showgrounds this year with the caliber of bands and just the scale of it all. You know, and it's only been a few short years. So, you know, I think it's great.